Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode. By the end of this episode, we're going to teach you how to become a strategic veteran. Not just a veteran, but a strategic veteran. This is going to be an awesome episode where we talk about podcasting, business, military. We got all kinds of shit to hang out and talk about. 211 Bravos, just talking shit. But this podcast episode is being brought to you by the number one podcast book on Amazon, The Podcasting Blueprint. If you want it, the audio, the one is $2. It costs $1.99 for the electronic version, $30 for the written book, autographed, with $997 worth of bonuses. So, guys, if you want to start a podcast, write podcast below. Now, guys, like I said, this episode is amazing. And the funny thing is, I was just on his podcast, and he dropped this episode, my episode, today. So we're going to be everywhere, all over the airwaves. Brother, welcome to the show. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me, Richard. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, man, we became friends probably about a month and a half ago. And I got to say, guys, if you want to have a better life, make sure he's in it, because he's one awesome dude. So before we even get started, he's a veteran. He's a podcast host. He's the Swiss Army knife of positivity. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. So let me ask you one question, Adam, before we even really get started, because I have a TBI, and if I don't ask the question, I'll forget. What is your definition of resiliency?
Your ability to pick yourself up off the floor when you get knocked down and keep doing it over and over and over again. It's that simple.
So you like that whole Rocky thing where you get knocked down 7 times, get up 8?
Yeah, brother. Absolutely. 100%. Rocky was my favorite movie growing up. All of them. It's still a fan, big fan. They're getting a little lame now, but loved them, man. And I believe that, can you get punched in the mouth, keep going forward?
Okay. So what was your favorite Rocky? Because I'm in the minority. When Rocky fought Tommy Gunn, and that was my favorite. And I still love that movie, and I'll watch it every time it comes on because it's all about home team and loyalty. So which Rocky was your favorite?
So growing up, my favorite was definitely, is it the third one where he fights Ivan Drago and he does that whole montage training scene in Russia? That's 4. Okay, so 4. Yeah. Rocky 4. I did like the Tommy Gunn one, but then when Rocky Balboa came out, I really liked that one too.
Yeah, I totally agree, because that had a lot more to do with mental health and stuff like that. So I totally grabbed that. So, okay, give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where you come from, where you grew up, because obviously your whole life hasn't been rainbows, Skittles, and unicorns, and happy music. So tell us a little bit about Adam and about you.
Yeah, man. I'm Adam Peters. I'm building the personal brand, The Strategic Veteran. It's a podcast. It's soon to be a community. I was born and raised in southern Indiana, a little town called Poseyville, Indiana. Farm towns, pretty poor. Come from a broken home and joined the Army to really just escape, get out. I knew that there was, a whole lot of world out there for me to see, and it didn't involve Posey County, Indiana.
Okay. And I want to give a big shout out to Aaron Knowles. Thank you for hopping on. Thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate you. So, Indiana, there's some interesting dudes. They're hardworking individuals. They're grinders. You can't get any harder working than the Pacers back in the day, the Colts back in the day. So, talk about what it was growing up like as a kid in Indiana.
Man, like I said, I come from a broken home. My parents divorced when I was pretty young at 7. I'm a daddy's boy, admittedly. My dad is my hero, and my mom did everything she could to keep my dad out of our lives, up to and including on his weekends to come pick us up. The neighbors across the street would have to stop him from setting foot in the driveway because she was going to have him arrested. Um, that's the kind of shit. I mean, my parents fought in front of God and everybody at my high school graduation. So that's kind of the upbringing I had. Wasn't raised with a whole lot of love in the house, if you will. Also not raised with technology. So, from usually about after breakfast, as long as we weren't in school, till from dusk till dawn light came on, or the street lights for you city folks. We were locked out. We were playing in the woods, playing in the ditch, covering ourselves in mud, using sticks as swords, playing army, you name it. We were being boys, my brother and I, my little sister too. However, she was kind of off doing her own thing because, I guess that doesn't really resonate with her. And so, I didn't have a lot of friends. I was bullied a lot, a whole lot, so much so that I hate bullies to this day. It affected me in a huge way, most of my adult life. And I didn't get over that until about 11 months ago, to be honest.
So, military, why? First of all, second of all, I mean, I was a 19 kilo, went to 19 Delta, became an 11 Bravo. So, tell us your recruiting story and the day you walked into the recruiter.
Oh, man, you're asking me to think back a long way. The why is kind of twofold. Being older and wiser, the why is really because I wanted to serve something bigger than myself. We are creatures of service, and I realize that now. But the real why, when I was a 17-year-old kid, was to get the hell out of small town Indiana, because, like I said, I knew there was more world out there, and I was bound and determined to see it. So I can remember 9/11 happened when I was a sophomore. So that weighed pretty heavy on me. And I'd already started thinking about, college isn't for me. School wasn't really for me. I did enough to keep my grades up to play sports. But other than that, I didn't care to sit at a desk all day and have somebody preach at me, have teachers pick on me because I was asking questions that they thought were beneath, the level of question I should be asking. So in that, you kind of don't get the help that you need to learn the material. So I just wanted out. And my journey to the military actually started, I talked to the Navy and the Air Force first because I've always wanted to be a pilot my whole life. And I didn't realize, because I don't come from a long line of military in my family. I mean, my grandfather on my dad's side, he fought in World War II as a medic. That was never talked about, and he died when I was really young. And then my uncle was a Vietnam veteran. But we know, the Vietnam guys, they had it really rough coming back, and he chose to compartmentalize and bury all of that stuff. And he never talked about it. In fact, I was a teenager before I learned he had even served. And so much so that, we don't have a relationship to this day, because when I finally did join the Army, he basically told me I was making the biggest mistake I'd ever made in my life and that I was going to regret it. And I just didn't think that that was appropriate. So kind of cut ties there. When the Army, or when the Air Force and the Navy told me to go get fucked, because my eyesight has always been bad, I was like, well, let me go talk to the Army and the Marines and see what they have to offer. And I stopped at the Army office first. And that was it for me, man. They showed me the videos of being Ranger and jumping out of helicopters and airplanes and, kicking doors in. And I was sold. I was like, that's what I want to do. So that's what I did. I joined at 17 on the delayed entry program.
Yeah,
I had a
me
buddy
too.
in high school. Yeah, I had a buddy in high school who had gone. He was a year ahead of me. He had gone to basic training this summer between his junior and senior year, and then he would go active duty once he graduated, finish, infantry basic training. So OSIT, really. I don't know how they split it up, but I missed that cutoff by a day. So I spent a year in the delayed entry program on a 11 X-ray Airborne Ranger contract, and off to basic training on June 24th of 2003, I went.
So, did you officially become a Ranger?
No, sir. In basic training, I found out that my recruiter we know how recruiters work, right? Back then, particularly, was all about getting numbers. They didn't give a shit how they did it. If they didn't get their numbers, it could really be detrimental to their careers. So he had put me in on, at the time, what was called the buddy program with some other enlistee from my high school whom I had no idea about. And long story short, essentially that canceled out the Ranger contract. So we got to family day at OSIT, and drill sergeant, my senior drill sergeant, came to me and was like, "Hey, we don't have a duty station for you." I was like, "What do you mean? My contract says 11 X-ray Airborne Ranger. I should be going down the street to airborne school and then off to RIP to see if I've got what it takes to be a Ranger." And he was like, "No, man, that is not what's going to happen." So basically, he gave me two choices after graduation. It was stay and be permanent party, and they would figure out how to get me back on the path to being a Ranger, or send me to Fort Stewart and the 3rd ID, and then I could pursue becoming a Ranger from a conventional unit like that. And I opted, because you don't know what you don't know, I opted to go to Fort Stewart because I didn't want to be a private hanging around a bunch of drill sergeants while they're, doing their thing all day, every day. I just thought that life would be miserable. Hindsight's 2020, probably should have stayed. Career would have been a lot different. However, with the time period I was in, we may not be sitting here having that conversation if that's how that would have gone.
Well, hey, at least you were in the land of the biggest mosquitoes ever, the biggest raccoons ever, and Savannah. So you had Savannah. That was pretty good, right?
I'll tell you, man, Savannah was a blast, dude. It taught me a lot about drinking, a lot about partying. It taught me a lot about all that kind of stuff. It was an amazing city, and I have no regrets, man. I really thoroughly enjoyed the almost decade I spent there. So
okay, so how many years did you put in total?
Right at just over 12 and a half. So I just round up to 13, from June of 2003 till November of 2015. So right at 12 and a half years.
Did you have some deployments under your belt?
I had 4 total. I did 3 to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan.
Okay, and I don't talk about war stories because that's what Jocko does. Jocko's great at that shit. I'm not.
That's good, brother, because I kind of moved past that stuff anyway.
Yep.
Life is about so much more than that.
Yep. Okay, so but let's talk about, because usually you're in for 10, you're in for 20. It's one of those things. My goal was to do 30, and as we talked about on your show, that didn't happen because God had other plans. But like Sergeant Nick talks about in one of my groups, when you step off base, the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing, you lose the camaraderie, and if you don't do 20, you pretty much don't have a paycheck. And a lot of us are either end up looking at the bottom of a bottle or at the end of a barrel. What was your transitioning like?
Just like you said, man, so we came home from Afghanistan, and I had a torn labrum in my left shoulder. They surgically repaired it. It took about a year for me to recover from that. And me being me, trying to keep up with the 18-year-olds and be a good leader and, rah, here we go, being a good soldier, I kind of pushed the recovery too far and ended up tearing it a second time, and went back to the surgeon, and he was like, "That's it, man, your career is over." And so from that point on, for the next probably about 8 months, I fell into the bottom of the bottle, and it was hard, man, to the tune of, I'm a 7-7 guy. That was my poison. And I was drinking at home. I would come home, I'd fill a 32-ounce Nalgene bottle with way too much Seagram 7 and a little splash of 7-Up. And I would drink that before I took my boots off, my top off, anything like that. And my peak, I was drinking two gallons of Seagram 7 at home, and then I would go down to the bar every single night and close it down from about 9 till when they closed in Washington State at about 2:30.
So it wasn't easy. Now, like I had General Petraeus on the show, and I said, "Sir, whenever we joined, I know it didn't happen to me. My recruiter wasn't like, 'Hey, Kaufman, you know, you have a shelf life and you're going to have to hang up that uniform one day. Start getting mentally prepared now. And when I talked to Petraeus, I said, sir, you know, you teach us to go to war, but you don't teach us to come home. And a lot of us struggle with reintegration into normality when we're no longer normal, or we, you know, because once you go off, whether it's the war, whatever, wherever it is, once you sign that paper that you're giving your life insurance over to somebody else, you're no longer the same person that you were.
I
And
agree.
so, talk to us about, you know, what that was like, because now you're out, don't no mission, don't have the camaraderie, and all you have is the bottle, and you start feeling alone, like a man on an island. So, what was that like? What was that real? Take us deep and dark, and what it was really like. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, you know, just get over it," and it's like, no, there's more to it than just getting over it.
Yeah, man. What was it like? Well, I was a career guy. I wanted to go to 20. I had made that decision based on, PCSM up to Fort Washington or Fort Lewis, Washington. Met my mentor, one of the greatest mentors I ever had in the Army, and First Sergeant Michael Robinson. If he's listening to this, I hope he knows that's how I feel about him. But he really kind of changed my perspective and made me want to be a career guy. So I reenlisted on that Afghanistan deployment, come home, find out I'm getting med boarded, right? And it killed me, man. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea. And us infantry guys, what do we put on a resume, brother? Yeah, you can't say I've spent the last, literally every other year of my life at war. So that doesn't translate to a skill that any corporation wants, right? So I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was lost. I was completely lost. What you don't realize when you're getting out at 30 years old, and I knew I was going to get some kind of VA disability for getting out. I ended up at 100%. I also got CSRC years later. So I wasn't too worried about how I was going to support myself. That wasn't a concern. It was how was I going to occupy my time, especially because I'm losing the thing that consumes the entirety of my time. I mean, as a staff sergeant holding a platoon sergeant position at the time, I'm at work at 5 a.m. every day. I'm not going home till 8:30, 9 o'clock every night. I'm constantly attached to a cell phone. You said it in the beginning, right? The phone stops ringing. It's funny that you say that. I have not turned the ringer on my phone since I've been out of the Army almost a decade ago. And I was lost, dude. I was completely lost. I think we all go through this period of time where we're like super excited to get our DD 214 and have freedom. And for me, that lasted about 3 weeks. And I realized at 30 years old, the civilian friends I had made all have jobs, so they can't hang out with me. The military friends that I have are constantly deploying or going to the field or training, or, they're at work too. So it's like, what do I do to fill my time from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed Monday through Friday? Well, I drink. That's what I do. So I found out that there was a flight school up the road, and I kind of got sober so that I could go to flight school. But that was a challenge in and of itself, because you get a rating for TBI and PTSD, and now all of a sudden the FAA thinks that you're not fit to fly. So I think it cost me somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 to actually get a medical so that I could go to flight school. And I got into flight school, and it's at a college, a community college, Clover Park Technical College. It's a great program, but I'm in college with young bucks, man. I mean, like, Washington has this really cool program called Running Start. So there were, 16 and 17-year-old students in my flight school with zero life experience, levels of immaturity that I haven't seen basically my whole adult life, because I joined at 17 and I got out at 30. And that by itself was a challenge. I had some of the women in my cohort at flight school telling me that I should be thankful that I don't have to pay for flight school. And I'm thinking, like, you have no fucking idea how I paid for this. You know what I mean? And very short temper. Just, you get it, man. Like, I don't even know if I have words to explain how challenging being in college was. And you know, it was even harder because you see younger folks and you have this life experience. And as a leader in the Army, you want to try and give them purpose, direction, and motivation, but they're not receptive to it. In fact, you mean nothing to them. So, I didn't even have the ability to go to the school and try and do the same thing that I had been doing in the Army and in leading people, because they just aren't receptive to it. And it was miserable, man. It was super miserable. Couple that with, I thought flying was my dream. I thought that was going to be the be all end all, and I'm going to be happy and have this purpose. And I found out that's not at all what flying is. Like, if you want a career in flying, there's a lot of dues you have to pay, and they come in the form of spending 1,500 hours in a 172 or a 182 with one other person, no air conditioning, going out to the practice area, which is just a box in the sky, and doing maneuvers over and over and over again. And I was like, this is awful. I hate this so much. So I continued to use my GI Bill. I got through flight school, got my AST in professional pilot, and then found out that Voc Rehab was a thing. And I was like, well, let me see what I can do with a bachelor's degree. So I went and started my bachelor's degree. And I went to a kind of a cool college in the Evergreen State University. I call it a choose your own adventure degree, because I got to take whatever classes I wanted that interested me. And that's when I kind of started falling in love with business and psychology and how the two are kind of intertwined. And that really pepped me up and kind of started me on the entrepreneurial journey, if you will.
Okay, now, like we talked about on your show, and now I get to return the favor. See, this is the fun part.
Yeah.
You asked me what it was like when they finally told me, well, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman. And then I had to reinvent and reimagine my life. So what was it like at the med board the final day when they said, you're no longer Staff Sergeant Adam Peters, and you had to go out into your car knowing that chapter of your life is over? What was that like?
That's a really good question. And honestly, it was a relief for me at the time. And I'll tell you why, because I spent way too long in the med board process. My med board took about 18 months longer than it should have, because they were in the process of transitioning from one software to another. I don't understand what their software systems do or how it all works, but basically the gist of it is I was just sitting around for almost 12 months waiting for orders to get out. And my orders had been lost between the transfer of these two systems. So for me, it was literally just a waiting game of a year. And I think that was more painful than anything, because they don't want you when you're just waiting on orders, because they're coming any day. So here I am, a staff sergeant. I have a lot of people in the company that look up to me, that are begging me to come back and be a leader, because we're through this weird transition process where we're coming home from Afghanistan. People are PCSing. We're getting new leaders. We don't have enough leaders to fill these spots. Just change. You know what the change is like. And so I'm hanging around for an entire year, not being able to do what I do best and lead these men who are begging me to lead them. So for me, it was almost a relief when they finally cut my orders and I got out and I got in that car. I also, First Sergeant Rob was a great mentor in that he would constantly remind us, as in anybody I ever saw him in the 3 years that I worked with that man, he would tell every soldier who's getting out, remember, the only thing you're taking with you is your last name. The Army does not give a shit about you. So I had already been somewhat prepared for that. So for me, it wasn't really that big a deal when you couple that with the whole year of just hanging around, and I'm just a random staff sergeant that doesn't have any kind of leadership position or authority or whatever. So.
All right. So let's talk about that, because I remember when I got down to Fort Dix and they're like, okay, here's your med board process. Here's a desk, sit there. You can get out on Sunday. You just sign out on Sunday. And when I got there, and we talked about this, everybody was playing chess, checkers, whatever. And after the first day, I'm like, I can't do this. So the first thing I did was pick up a book by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's how I started thinking. Okay, I need to learn something for when I get out of here. So, what was that like, the med board process, and were you preparing from that moment on to get out?
Yeah, man. So the med board process, I have to think back. I mean, it's been almost a decade. Um, it was fairly simple. I had a really pleasant med board process, and I think it's just because I got lucky with the personnel that they assigned to handle each individual step. So my Peblo was amazing. I don't remember her name, but I would know her face if I saw it. She was awesome. So she was always on top of everything, scheduling the appointments that I needed to go to, communicating with me where I needed to be and when I needed to be there and what was going on, other than the little snafu with losing my orders in this digital transition land. But when I go to get, claim all the injuries or whatever, I remember them telling me to make my own list of things that I wanted to claim. And I think I could only come up with like 10 or 15. And I show up to my VA rep, and he's been through my medical record, and he's got a list of like 55 things. And I'm like, let's go with your list. And he was like, cool. If you're cool with it, sign here. And then, I had to appeal my decision because I had a couple of surgeries while I was in that they tried to not give me a rating for, but the nature of the surgery that I had and the language in their little med board handbook qualified me for like max rating on those surgeries. So I got a really good lawyer because they will assign you a lawyer for the appeal process. And my lawyer, she's like, your case is cut and dry. He's like, they cannot deny this because the exact surgeries that you had is the exact same language in their manual for rating that they use. So I don't know who missed this or whatever. So honestly, the med board process was a very pleasant thing for me. And, I was lucky in that the first sergeant that had taken over for First Sergeant Rob worked out a deal where basically I just had to show up on Monday, tell him that I was still alive, and answer my phone the rest of the week if he called me, because he was like, I'm not going to put you somewhere where there's an E5 in charge of you. That doesn't make sense. He's like, and I don't have anything that you can do. So just use this time wisely. And so I was kind of preparing to get out. I was trying to figure out what the fuck I wanted to do because I didn't know. So, I had explored going to the underwater welding school up in Seattle. I had explored a couple of other, full-time opportunities, like going to get a welding certification and just kind of doing the dry land welding thing. I had been applying to jobs, had a couple of weird offers where I was like, I know nothing about your industry. I don't know how the hell you think that I could lead your people. And then I did find that flight school. I went up to that flight school. I went to their little orientation that they do to try and recruit people. I asked the questions I needed to do. And then the rest of my time was very much spent wading through all of the red tape with the FAA to be able to get a medical so I could start flight school the minute I got out.
Okay, so then you said you transitioned over into business. So because I believe that if you've spent more than 7 minutes in the military, we know how to write an SOP. We know how to write a 9-line. But when we try to get into business or even podcasting, a lot of us, including me when I first started, I did everything willy-nilly. I didn't have a plan. I just went by the seat of my pants. So talk to us about entrepreneurship and how the military, the positives of the military, can transition over into entrepreneur life.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, this from coming on my show, and for those that are watching this right now, I believe the military teaches what I call high leverage skills: leadership, discipline, problem solving, adaptability. We could go on and on and on with that list, but those are the main ones that that really translate well into the business world. I'm like you. I still don't have a proper functioning business plan. But what I was doing is taking, these random business and psychology classes, seeing how they were teaching at the Evergreen State College. And it's not like a traditional school. It's very much a choose your own adventure school. There's no grades. It's all self-evaluations and then professor evaluations. And then you come together and do a final evaluation to get your credits. I would argue that it's actually harder because you can't fake the funk. You actually have to do the work because you're evaluated based on the body of work that you do. So I had started, obviously YouTube, we use YouTube for everything, right? And I'd started seeing, these gurus pop up, make money online, do this, do that kind of thing. So I got curious. I got really curious because I think like a lot of people out there, I thought it was bullshit. I was like, there's no way that you can be making this kind of money every single month from building something, online where you don't have to leave your house. You're not bound to an office or whatever. And, that whole 2 years I was working on my bachelor's degree, I was interested in that stuff. And I was going and learning more about psychology and how all that plays into copywriting and everything else. And I just decided one day that I was going to figure out how to do that. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I'm telling you, Richard, I've tried everything. I've tried Amazon FBA. I've tried drop shipping. I've tried print on demand. I've tried faceless YouTube and TikTok. I have tried blogging. I have tried, if you can name it, and it's a digital entrepreneurship space, I've probably tried it and I failed at every single fucking one of them. I'm not afraid to admit it. I think a lot of them I failed because I just wasn't passionate about them. And really what kind of set me on the true entrepreneurial journey where I really started to learn was after you finish college on the Voc Rehab program, they will pay you for like 90 days the BAH money that they had been paying you. And the stipulation with that is you have to be applying to careers, not jobs, but careers based on your degree or kind of similar based on your degree. And also you cannot turn down any interviews. So I had applied like I was supposed to, thinking like nobody's going to pick me up for these interviews. And what actually happened was I got picked up to interview with a insurance company. And I knew nothing about the insurance industry, but boy, they got me hook, line, and sinker with how much money you can actually make in the insurance industry and that it's not that hard. And it appealed to me, it was something I was interested in. So I uprooted my wife and I and our dog, and we moved from Washington to South Carolina. And I started my foray into the insurance world. And that's where I really cut my teeth on business because, I was 1099. So technically I was running everything through an LLC when I would get paid. Everything was on me. Paying taxes was on me. Managing a book of business was on me. Following up with that book of business, however, I didn't know it at the time, was on me because I wasn't taught what I wasn't taught, right? I didn't know about chargebacks. And so my first gig in the insurance world was selling final expense to seniors. And I mean, the poorest 1/3 of America in rural Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, and North Florida. I mean, the poorest of the poor. You're trying to sell an intangible life insurance product to people who already don't have any money. And most of them didn't even have bank accounts. And this is 2020. So you've got COVID going on as well. And I hated it. I felt like a scumbag. It just was grimy and sleazy. And some of the tactics they teach you out there are pretty awful. And I've said this on several other shows, but I didn't know about chargebacks. And so in the insurance industry, you'll get a percentage of commission based on the premium that you write. So let's just use an example. If I wrote $100 a month premium at 75% commission, they would multiply that $75 times 9, and that would be my check for that one policy that I wrote. However, if that policy doesn't stay in force for that 9 months, you owe whatever is left back to the insurance company. So essentially what I was finding was I'm writing a policy today, it's staying in force for about a week, and then they're canceling it because they don't have any money. And nobody taught me that you're supposed to call these people and follow up with them and try and save, save the business. And in that follow-up, they should have taught me how to actually do that instead of just me calling this dude like, hey, yo, why didn't you pay your fucking premium? You know what I mean? And so I felt like I was in a spot where I'm making money because I'm selling policies, but I can't spend any of this money for 9 months. And I was like, this is not for me. So I picked up a work from home health insurance job, 1099, same thing. That was going well, selling a lot of policies. It's not as lucrative as the life insurance space, but you can make decent money. I don't like health insurance because it's just as scummy. I mean, insurance in general is kind of scummy. So, but health insurance, the plans cost a lot of money. They don't really benefit the client, and your commission on it is pretty much shit. So you just it's a volume game. And I was doing well at it, but they turned my leads off for 10 days. And you can't make money if you don't have fresh leads to call. So I took it upon myself, right? We talk about resiliency, right? This is how resilient I am. I started knocking doors, hated that, and was basically going broke because I couldn't spend any money, to working from home, and they turned my leads off, to, well, I'm not done with this insurance thing. Let me keep going with this. I printed 15 copies of my resume off, and I drove around Columbia, South Carolina, and I walked into every big box property and casualty insurance store I could find. Allstate, State Farm, Geico, Progressive. I think there was a Progressive office. There might have been a nationwide office. And I walked away with 3 or 4 offers that same day from different agencies. And I picked an Allstate agency because I liked what they had to say, and they had promised, some professional development, some Series 6 and 63 stuff where, they would pay for my certification to run that kind of money management inside of the Allstate agency. And I really was fired up about it. So I started that in May of 2021, I think. Yeah, May of 2021. And by November, I was out. I was done with the insurance industry because another situation where I wasn't getting paid commissions for the work I was doing. And that's when I really went full time into trying to figure out how digital entrepreneurship works. And
by the way, Gamecocks, baby. William Bryce Stadium. Love William Bryce Stadium. Go Gamecocks.
Negative. Go Irish.
Oh, as long as you didn't say Clemson, then you wouldn't have got clicked off. But
no. I'm a fighting Irish all the way, man.
So let's talk about because I love digital, and I was just talking about another friend of mine a little while ago, and I was with GNC for 30 years, and we would open at 9 and we would close at 9, and the money would start at 9 and it would end at 9. With digital, the internet never closes. So like next month, I'm going to be in the Bahamas on the 4th of July, drinking virgin pina coladas, sitting in a jacuzzi. I still got to have money coming in because I have digital products and digital real estate. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about some digital real estate and digital marketing.
Yeah, man. If you don't have an email list and you don't understand the power of an email list, I'd suggest that you start there. That in and of itself is super powerful, and you would be surprised at the ROI. For every dollar you invest on your email list, it should return you between 35 and 40 bucks, I think is the most recent study that I've seen. And there's nothing else like it. And I don't know, I'm fascinated by all of it, man. You can have a newsletter that talks about fishing, and you can make all kinds of money doing that, right? You can build a personal brand like I'm trying to do through social media and a podcast, and you would not believe the opportunity to monetize these things, from affiliate commissions to creating your own digital assets and teaching people the knowledge that you have, to, sometimes people even ask if they can pay to come on the podcast, which is strange to me. It's like, what the hell? But it's a fascinating world, man.
Yeah, and like I put this out.
Yeah.
It's the #1 book on podcasting on Amazon. I think it cost me maybe $1,000 to make and publish. It's already made 10 times that.
There you go.
And it also makes it to where I actually have people that I teach podcast, private teaching. So, but I know that even when I'm on vacation or when I'm sleeping, Amazon's pushing it out, and I'm making money even while I'm sleeping.
And
And
that's the beautiful thing about digital entrepreneurship. It takes a long time to get the systems in place to generate that kind of revenue, but it's evergreen and it lives forever. You really minimal management behind it. You create a digital asset and you sell it forever.
yeah, and you only have to create it once. And
One
and that
time.
was something, I've spent now it's over $100,000 and 11,000 hours learning about what digital assets. Because I had a friend and he said, "All right, I'm gonna give you a course for free about digital." And I'm like, "Bro, that's bullshit." I'm like, "That stuff doesn't work." He's like, "Just try it." I was like, "All right, I'm gonna try it, and I'm gonna prove to you that bullshit doesn't work." I took the course. I made my first digital product, my first book, and right after that, my father passed. And I spent 3 weeks or a month taking care of mom. During that whole time, money was coming in. And that's when I realized, okay, you weren't bullshitting me. So I
Yeah,
had to
it's
make
not
a public
bullshit, is it?
so I had to make a public apology, of course. But that's when I realized that, if you can make, because a lot of people don't realize, and I wrote this down, uh, Google is the number one search engine. YouTube is the number two search engine. So, and also, if you put something on YouTube, it's going to live there forever. If you put something on Pinterest, it's going to be there forever. Where, like, if you put a post on LinkedIn or if you put a post on Facebook, it's gone within 24 hours, 48 hours. There's certain platforms that it lives forever. I'm still getting affiliate money from interviews I did 6 years ago on YouTube.
There you go. Right. So to all those people, I mean, you were one of those people. You're like, you're full of shit. There's no way to
Yeah,
do this. Right.
right. And that's
And
exactly,
and
that's
I
exactly
had a
what I said.
little I might be a little bit more gullible than you because I was never like, oh, you're full of shit. I was just curious. I was like, is this a real thing? You know what I mean? And as I continue to learn, I was like, fuck, this is really cool. Like this shit is real. And I think even more, I think people get turned off to it, right? Because start talking about like, everybody's number is usually like $10,000 a month, right? Like that's their freedom number or whatever it is. And then you start moving into like $20,000 a month. And like people think that's a lot of money. But when you understand this world, that is not a lot of money at all. And it's like this rewiring of your brain from what society has taught us our entire lives about, we could talk about it if you want. Our school system is set up to make you wage slaves. They don't want a nation of thinkers. They want a nation of doers. I think Carnegie is the one that said that, right? And
Yep.
and so and so I think that's the biggest challenge when you start talking about the kind of money that you can make on the internet is people aren't familiar with that. They're not open and receptive to that because their whole lives they've been told go to school, get a good job, a salaried job, cap out at like I think the goal is 6 figures, right? Like that seems to be pretty common. At least that was what I was taught when I was growing up. I'm sure it's probably more now, particularly with the state of the union. But 6 figures, fuck, you can make that in 6 months.
Well, my mind got blown because I was told that if you want to be the best, you have to get taught by the best and you have to be mentored by the best. So the guy that wrote the whole back cover of my book, Mr. John Lee Dumas, who's my mentor and friend, makes 250,000 a month from
There you
his podcast
go.
and gets 1 million downloads per month on his podcast. And he's a retired Army tanker. So we all know you don't have to be that smart.
No, you
You,
don't.
you just got to be able to hustle, put in the work and study. So now you said you're about 7 episodes into your new podcast. I mean, as far as putting them out, you still have many in the hopper. So talk about what your foray was into podcasting and how you got into it, and who did you start watching to start learning from what they're doing?
Yeah, man. So, where do I start with this? So, several years ago, I had a friend in Washington State shortly after I got out of the Army. He was a civilian guy. We're both big football fans. He called me out of the blue one day. I was doing some work with some wood in my garage or something. And I thought it was strange that he'd call me because we didn't have a super close relationship. But he calls me and he's like, "Hey, man, I want to talk about football and maybe talking about football on a podcast." And I was like, "Well, I've never started a podcast before. This could be cool." So we ran with it, man. We bought some cheap little microphones and, some very basic, software to record with. And we started a fantasy sports podcast, and our little circle of friends would download it every week. And it was a good time, man. It was cool to sit down and talk with a buddy about a sport that I'm passionate about. And so, I didn't know anything about how to grow a podcast at the time. I didn't know anything about email marketing and promotion and just marketing in general. I've been social media pretty much my whole adult life because I'm an 80s baby, right? I wasn't raised with this shit. Like Facebook, I can remember when Facebook, you had to have a .edu email address to get on the platform. I probably didn't have a Facebook until maybe my third deployment in 2010. So social media has not been something that I've just latched onto or whatever. And that podcast never went anywhere because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so fast forward to November of 2023 is when I really started hard on building the personal brand and really started getting active on LinkedIn and really sinking my teeth into marketing and promotion, self-promotion and all of that. And through that, I didn't know what to post about. I didn't know what I wanted to talk about, but I just kept doing it. I kept posting. I kept engaging with at least 5 people on LinkedIn every day. And eventually what would happen is people would DM me and reach out and like, "Hey, you're cool. Let's jump on a call and learn more about where you're going." And through that, I would learn more things and it would inform the direction I was going. And so ultimately it culminated in a challenge with one of my mentors and Colby Wecker. He's on LinkedIn. He's a great dude. Go to his community meetings every week, learn a lot. He's really helped me with all of this, but he put out a post challenging members of his community and his audience to reach out to a person in your local area that's content resonates with you and see if they will do a in-person meetup because there's so much more to be gained from in-person meetups. So I did that. And I reached out to Mike Romaine, who is the writer creator on LinkedIn. He's a newsletter guy. He talks about creator newsletters. He's a smart dude. He has another newsletter called Superhero Jack that he has gotten to 7 figures. So I was like, I've always been fascinated with newsletters and all of that. So I reached out to Mike Romaine. I sent him a DM and he actually responded. He's like, "Yeah, dude, I'll meet you over in Disney Springs." So Disney Springs is about an hour and a half from me. Spent an entire Sunday afternoon with him. And he was like, "Hey, man," the first thing he says to me, he's like, "You're not the guy that's going to get his message across typing words behind a keyboard. Have you thought about a podcast?" And from that day forward, man, I leaned in as hard as I could and started the Strategic Veteran, knew that I wanted to do something for veterans, and came up with this idea that the path back to purpose for veterans is through entrepreneurship. And I believe that for a ton of reasons, because of all those high leverage skills that we have, because entrepreneurship is a never ending mission that you control and you can build that is in alignment with your values and your beliefs, your core values and your core beliefs. And nobody can ever take that away from you. And it's just so rewarding and so fulfilling. And so I did, man. I reached out to a couple of the guys that I had gone to Peru with that I knew owned businesses. And I was like, "Hey, will you do me a solid? Will you be the first 2 guests on my podcast? I'm putting this thing out." And then we met because I was like, I got to get more guests. So I went to Facebook and I joined a bunch of veteran entrepreneur groups. I made 1 post and boy, oh boy, did my life change. That's when I got a hard lesson in time management. That's when I got a hard lesson in systems, and it's been ridiculous since, Richard. I mean, I got you from there. We got hooked up through Facebook. You were one of the first people to respond to my post and say I'd absolutely be a guest on your show. And man, the number of people that have latched onto my show, that discover my show, civilians and military alike, has been mind blowing.
And I'll be posting our episode tomorrow, because you're on mine already, so I don't want to overlap. And a lot of people don't realize, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to put yours out and put mine out on the same day. And I'm like, no, you really want to overlap, so you're getting more coverage on 2 different days, and it's becoming strategic.
Yeah, man.
So, because I believe that in business, you can either go 2 ways. You can either do the pray and spray, or you can be the sniper and be strategic. And for me, I try to every day, my 3 words for this year are intention, attention, and retention.
I love that.
So I try to be strategic in everything that I do. I don't just put a post out to just put a post out. And that's something I've learned from Alex and Layla Hormozy, Gary. I've these people, they don't just put something out willy-nilly. They're doing everything strategic. So talk about what being a strategic veteran actually is.
Yeah, man, that's a really good question, and something I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to. But I guess just to me, it means understanding as a veteran, you have this immediate base of power because you are a veteran, which gets your foot in a lot of doors. So being strategic about how you wield that power and leverage those skills that you've been developing for a whole career really starts with understanding that you do have the option to be an entrepreneur, right? That's the first step, because most veterans have never been told that this is an option for them. It wasn't presented to me. I had to figure it out in my mid-30s, right? And so by being a strategic veteran, really you need to understand how to network and how to leverage all of those skills that you have in the most efficient manner. So, like, for example, for me, my podcast is now on over 14 platforms. Is it going to get views on all 14 of those platforms? Probably not. But the fact that I am willing to take the 15 minutes it took to set it up so that I exist on a platform that's available to me where somebody can stumble across it and find it is an example of being strategic. Understanding how to leverage the network that I've built on LinkedIn by funneling them into my email list, which is traffic that I will own forever, is being strategic, right? Instead of, like you said, the spray and pray method. With my first podcast, I just figured out what I needed to do to start a podcast. I got a host. I got a little bit of equipment. I pushed record, didn't edit anything, would upload the same night, no promotion, no social media following. And no wonder I only got like 100 downloads total over 2 years, right? So really seeking knowledge and implementing that knowledge in the most efficient way possible is what I think of when I think of a strategic veteran.
And now, let's talk about, because some stuff that I've written down. I think on LinkedIn, I think we're almost at 30,000 connections now. And when I put my newsletter out on Thursdays, my Thursday Thunder newsletter, that goes out to like 10,000 people, and it goes straight to their emails.
Yep.
And it's free.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people are thinking, well, why should I join LinkedIn? Well, first of all, if you're a veteran, the first year is free. You get LinkedIn Premium for free. You can take as many courses and classes as you want for free for 1 whole year. And 90% of the time, they forget to shut it off. I have some people that have been on it for 6 years without paying for LinkedIn Premium.
Yeah.
And once you have that premium account, you are probably, just by being a premium member, you're probably going to get 10 to 20 people a day reaching out to you to connect.
It depends on what your niche is and what skill set you have. But yeah, I totally agree with that, man. Also being strategic is understanding how to take advantage of the opportunities that you have out there. LinkedIn Premium is a great one. If you've ever heard of America's Corporate Partners, they're another good one. I just got my mentor. He's a venture capitalist guy, right? I get a free year of mentorship from a guy who knows how business works inside and out, right? And I think really, just being a lifelong learner and taking advantage of these opportunities that you have. LinkedIn Premium is a great example because you're right. I forget that you can take all these courses because I just don't have time to take the courses anymore, but if you want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, LinkedIn Premium's got a lot of great courses. They'll teach you about digital marketing. They'll teach you about how to build an email list. Shit, you can go sign up for ConvertKit today for free, and their creator course, it'll teach you how to build an email list. It's good shit. It's good quality shit that will get you started and at least open your mind to what's possible.
And it's amazing how, a lot of people, I'll be like, hey, bro, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, me and the old lady, we just binge watched whatever Ballers for 14 hours. And I'm like, did you take any of the LinkedIn courses that were free that were like 40 minutes each? Oh man, I ain't got time. It's like,
yeah, right.
It's like you have time for what you make time for. And sometimes, and I think that's what we're talking about earlier before we came on, I'm listening to a course by Brian Tracy. He said, eat the frog, do the hardest shit first. So even if it's just taking a class for a half hour a day, when you first get up in the morning, by the end of the week, you might have knocked out 2 or 3 classes. And when you finish a class or a course on LinkedIn and you get the certificate, it automatically goes into your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
So, when I tell people, what are your priorities, and are you being strategic about your priorities, right?
And that's exactly it, man. It's priorities. What your priorities are to binge watch 14 hours of Ballers. Hey, I'm not going to talk shit about you because I was there 11 months ago. I was doing that, right? And that's not the way you want to live your life. I promise you there's a better way to live your life. And it's not sitting in front of a TV. It's building something that's going to be yours that you truly enjoy, that will eventually pay you more money than you ever could have dreamed of.
Yeah. And do you ever, and I think I had my friend David Meltzer come on the show, and he's got like a $20 billion company. He's like rich. He's like, there's a reason why you don't see Maserati commercials on TV. You don't see Lambo commercials on TV. He says, because most people that are watching TV can't afford Lambos or Maseratis. He says, and then he also said, hey, if you're going to watch 14 hours of Ballers, why don't you work 14 hours to become a baller?
There you go. Yeah, like, it's and again, not talking shit on those people because I was sitting in their shoes not 12 months ago. You know what I mean? I was very much analysis paralysis, watching countless hours of YouTube saying tomorrow I'll take action. But until you take action, it's not going to happen for you, right?
But don't you think that you might have one guy who says, well, I work 10 hours a day. Like for me, when I was young, I was in the bodybuilding scene. That was my thing. And you'd have guys that would work out for 4 or 5 hours a day. And then you would have 8-time Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates come in. 40 minutes, he's done. He focused, he annihilated his body, and he walked the fuck out of the gym. So he did in 40 minutes what the other guys were doing for 4 or 5 hours. So how important do you think even just focusing for that 8 hours and not having to work those 14 hours?
Well, I mean, so I think that's kind of a loaded question. And the reason I think that is because we need to define what work is, right? And so what is work to you? I'll flip it back at you. To me, I'm working from the time I get out of bed in the morning till usually about 7 or 8 at night. Now, is that me sitting in front of a computer, doing something? No, that's not what it looks like. To me, Work is the physical fitness that I do to take care of my mental health. Work is while I'm doing my morning walk 4 miles every single morning at 6 a.m. is listening to that audiobook that is teaching me something about, how to be a better podcaster, or how to ask better questions, or how to structure my finances so that I, can continue to do what I do without having to get a full-time or a part-time job. Work looks like having conversations with people who not necessarily smarter than I am, but smarter than I am, just further ahead on the journey, right? Work looks like sitting down to record a podcast episode. Work looks like writing that email. Work looks like answering that email. Work at the last 2 hours of my day is me sitting in front of my TV, watching YouTube of some podcaster so that I can learn how to be a better podcaster. So I think really when you start to redefine your definition of work and you look at it the way that I do and see everything as something that moves the needle forward, it really doesn't become work, and you can start working a lot more hours.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I know like a lot of people, like jobs I used to have, they would get in at 9 o'clock, go to the water cooler, get their drink, make a muffin, check a couple emails, go to lunch, come back, get something else to drink. And if you really look at how much, if they would have just took that laser focus and put in 2 hours worth of work, they could have got done more in 2 hours than they did all day. That's
Yeah,
exactly what
absolutely.
I'm saying,
Absolutely. And don't get it twisted, man. I still have periods of deep focus work where, I turn my phone off. I close every other browser tab that I have open, and I really focus in on that thing that I have to do. But I think part of being an entrepreneur, right, is as you grow and you hit new milestones, your capacity for work increases as well. So you're able to do more because you understand how to better manage your time and what work actually looks like. You know what I mean?
Okay, so for the last couple of minutes, you mentioned Mr. Carnegie not too long ago, and one of his disciples, a guy named Napoleon, guy you might have heard of. He wrote a book, and it was called Think and
And
Grow
grow
Rich. It
rich.
wasn't called Work and Grow Rich. It wasn't called Hustle and Grow Rich. It was called Think. And it
Think.
brings me back to like yesterday. If somebody would have took pictures of me, they're like, there's no way he was working. I put my phone on. I was listening to Brian Tracy, and I sat in my jacuzzi for 30, 45 minutes, just listening and learning, but sitting in the back of the jacuzzi, quietness and nothing but that. That was my definition of work. But I think I got more knowledge in 45 minutes doing that than most people would do 3-4 hours in a classroom.
100%. I agree with that. 1,000%. You might agree with this. The whole reason I'm like, there's a hidden agenda behind the Strategic Veteran podcast. And really what it is I get to sit down because my episodes turn out to be about 2.5, 3 hours long. And for 3 hours, I'm getting a masterclass from somebody who probably charges a ridiculous amount of money for their time, and rightfully so, who actively wants to be there and have a conversation with me and teach me about what it is that they do. Like, you want to call that work? Okay, great. Cause it is work. But like, for me, it's just fun, dude. It's like I get to learn and work at the same time. And I imagine that's what you feel like with your podcast, or when you were listening to that audiobook in your hot tub, right? It's the reason I listen to the audiobooks when I walk every morning. I hang out with my dogs, I work through some mental shit, and I'm consuming probably not 100% of what I hear, but I'm definitely learning something from listening to that.
Yeah, and like I was driving in my car yesterday, I had to go somewhere, and I turned the radio on, and I always have either Hair Nation on or I have some heavy metal stuff on. I'm like, what am I doing? Listen to this shit. So I popped on my podcast that I listen to, and it's just once you start thinking, you don't want to just put in crap, because crap in, crap out, and the
Yep.
more positive stuff that you can learn, the more you're going to be able to put into your own life. Like I think we're up to like almost 1,260 episodes. There is no reason that this ninth grade dropout should have three best-selling books, be able to sit in front of people like David Meltzer, Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon Lecter. But if I didn't have this platform, I wouldn't be able to. Because even I said to Robert, I'm like, what would it cost me to go take an hour of your time to sit in front of you? He's like, 10 grand.
Yeah, there you go.
And he's like,
Right.
and I'm like, so you're going to come on my show? He's like, yeah, they're like, yeah, we'll come on your show. We can last about an hour, hour and a half. I'm like, so wait a minute. You were going to charge me 10 grand so I can ask you questions. Now you're coming on my show for as long as I want to ask you whatever I want. And I think that the power of having a platform like we have, like I know when crypto started, I'm like, I don't know shit about crypto. Right. So who's the best crypto guy in the world? Let me invite him on the show and pepper him with questions for an hour and a half. And I think that's the beauty of having a platform like a podcast, right?
Absolutely. And anyone can do it. Anyone can do this. Your book, your new book, I've read it cover to cover, and you literally you say in the book, if you follow these steps by this afternoon, you will have your own podcast. It really is that simple, and then from there, it's just consistency. Just keep doing it and don't ever quit.
And you want to keep getting better. Like, I'm a low-tech redneck, and you know that. I tell you all the time, I'm a low-tech redneck. So it takes, and I'm 55. So when somebody says, well, you got to learn ChatGPT 4.0, I'm like, oh, more shit I got to learn. But it keeps you on your toes, because now I can make graphics that used to take me hour and a half, 2 hours, a minute. My graphics are done. So talk to us about how AI and how things are changing so quick that you don't have to do all the work that you used to. You can actually use AI as an assistant, not as a crutch, but as an assistant. Like my lawyer has an assistant. My nurse has a nurse practitioner. I use AI as an assistant, not a crutch. So talk about that a little bit for the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, for sure. So, you want to have a newsletter for your podcast to be able to promote it to your list. Well, something that's really cool, I don't know if StreamYard does it because I don't use StreamYard, but Riverside, which is what I use, will spit out the transcript from our entire show. It's a text document. It's not very big. I can then take that and I can put it into ChatGPT and be like, hey, find me 3 lessons from this transcript of this podcast. And now it's cut 2.5 hours worth of talking into 3 main points that I can then turn into 3 LinkedIn posts. I just go clip that section of the video, turn it into a short, and bam, I'm done. I didn't have to write any of it because it's me and, for example, you talking. So the tone, the voice is already what it's supposed to be. The format is going to be whatever it kicks out, and you're free to edit that to your discretion, make it legible or whatever. But, if you were to comb through, let's just say before AI was around, somebody would have to sit down and listen to 2.5 hours of my podcast, right? And they would have to either type it or hand write it out. There are still companies out there that charge to do this for you, by the way, and they're still making money doing it because I don't know why, but now Riverside just spits it out for me. I can plug it into ChatGPT and I have posts in 15 minutes. Maybe max, depending on how jam-packed the ChatGPT server is.
Yeah, and honestly, the first 1,000 episodes I had, I would actually listen to my own podcast and go into my text, and I would text all the high points, and then I have to copy and paste it, and it would take me like 10 hours to do one podcast episode. And just by learning what I've learned, it may take me an hour, hour and a half, not including recording time. But that's 8.5 hours it saved me just by using an AI as an assistant and not a crutch.
And what can you?
It's not a crutch; it's an assistant.
Yeah, and what can you do with that? Extra 8 hours you now have. Well, you can create more content to exist harder in front of your audience and become more well known and grow your shit, right? Like, and that's the beauty of all of this, right? I think, particularly speaking about a podcast, the podcast gives me everything I need to do. I could get weeks worth of content from one podcast, right? And I have, I think, 30 total recorded right now. So I've got 30 weeks worth of content if I release one episode a week. The goal is to get to 2 episodes a week. I'm coming for you, Richard. I'm coming for you. But, because of the tools we have available to us now, really anybody can do this. And, it's going to cost you, I don't know, maybe $100 a month to run a podcast, bare minimum. Let's be honest. There are a lot of other things that you can pay for that are helpful. But, if you wanted to start a podcast by this afternoon, you're going to have to pay for hosting and a platform to record on at a bare minimum. And I think that'll cost you right at $60 a month or something like that. And then if you want to add some little AI assistant to you, I would suggest ChatGPT-4, $20 a month. So for $80 a month, you could really have everything you need to start and run a podcast and grow a podcast.
Yeah. And if you get the ebook before the prices go up, that's $2 and it's all clickable. So you can have it started by dinner. So what's going on with with your podcast? What's going on in the world of Adam Peters today?
Yeah, man. The podcast it's doing better than I could have imagined for having only published 6 episodes. I'm going to continue to try and grow this thing as big as I can. I put out a post on my birthday last month on the 9th. I want to get my show in front of 1 million veterans by the time I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025. So that's the hard charging goal I have. Really, some other goals I have, just get it to 1,000 downloads a month right now, to guest on 25 podcasts this year, because that's also part of growing a podcast. We've got a partnership coming up with a really cool company that I'm not going to announce yet, but look for that to be happening. And since you're putting this out tomorrow, I'll just tell everybody that's listening, Saturday, if you're subscribed to my newsletter, The Strategic Veteran, you'll be finding out about a community that I'm going to launch the wait list for and start testing to see if there's any interest in that. Man, other than that, really, I just want to continue to have the conversations with veteran entrepreneurs, have them tell their stories, and get this in front of the people who I was a little over a year ago, sitting on the couch, overweight, feeling like they're stuck with no purpose. I feel like if I would have had this to latch onto while I was doom scrolling on the couch, it would have been a huge wake-up call for me. And so far, I think I'm achieving the mission, and I'm going to continue to refine my craft and get better and bring, as much energy to this as I possibly can, because, we talked about this on my show. I can't keep picking up my phone to notifications of dead battle buddies, man. These are some of the finest men and women I've served with, that the planet has ever seen. And it's a tragedy what's going on in our community. And I feel like this is my way of doing my part to stop that.
So I know we can find you on LinkedIn, because I love your LinkedIn page. And I love your podcast. I'm subscribed, of course. So how do we find you, and how do we support the mission?
Yeah, man. The main way to find me is LinkedIn, like Richard just said. The podcast is on, like I said, like 14 major podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Deezer, whatever. It's all The Strategic Veteran. thestrategicveteran.com. It's just a landing page right now. It's in development. The website should be done hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days. I'm learning what I didn't know about having someone build a website. And then the show is also on YouTube, so you can find us there. Reach out to me if you ever need help. DM me. Richard knows I answer my DMs as fast as possible. Anybody else from LinkedIn will tell you I don't charge to take an hour of my time to talk to you, help you, coach you, whatever you need. I genuinely just want to share all of the things that I have learned with people and have a hand in inspiring you to be something better than what you already are.
And I just want to put out there, because you're very good at this, and I wanted to give you big props earlier, but I forgot. A lot of people are not social on social media. I know a lot of people, they'll put out a post, have 100 comments and 0 replies. And I think that's something where me and you run neck and neck is we're like, if somebody takes the time to write a comment, I'm going to thank that person and reply to that person. Thank you for watching the show or something. Because not only does it make them feel loved and cared about and appreciated, that also boosts up the algorithm. So I just wanted to say that I love that you do that. And especially in the post I seen you did on LinkedIn, every comment you reply to every single one. So I just wanted to
Every
get
single
shout
one.
out
Yep.
because that's the way
I do.
it's going to grow.
Usually till about 5 p.m. and then I won't respond to any more comments that come through. Just I can't be donating that much time to LinkedIn, but I will. I'll reply to every comment. I try to reply to every DM unless you're going to be cold emailing me in the DMs trying to. I think the one that I got this morning was like, "Hey, I can optimize your LinkedIn profile." And I'm like, "Hey, dumbass, my profile is pretty optimized. I understand how to play this game. You know, maybe do read the room a little bit before you DM me." But I also answer every single one of the emails that you guys reply to on my email list. So get on the email list. I will reply, and I really genuinely care about the feedback. So if you have feedback for me for the show, you don't think I'm doing something very well, or you would like to see a guest on, or you want me to talk more about this and less about this, I welcome that feedback. I have thick skin. I understand how to play this game, and I will be appreciative and I will thank you for positive or negative feedback.
So, brother, I just want to say thank you for your friendship, and I can't wait to see where our friendship grows from here because I know we're going to be doing some great things together. I have some things in the hopper right now where I want to do a virtual event for veterans to teach veterans how to podcast, and I would love to have you come to be one of my teachers to have you come on. So I just can't wait
Brother,
to see.
I'm honored, man. I'd love to help you do that. Yeah, absolutely.
I just can't wait to see the things that you've got going on in the future.
Brother, I appreciate you having me, man. This is I appreciate you giving me an opportunity. I know you have such a large audience, and it's a pleasure to be able to inspire you enough to welcome me into your audience and doing what I do. And I'm super grateful for you, Richard. I really appreciate you, man.
I love it, brother. And guys, like I said, if you want to start a podcast, this book is only 47 pages, but it's over 11,000 hours and $100,000 it costs to make that. So for $30, you can actually learn everything that I know, and I'll give you an hour of my time to teach you this stuff. And for $2, you can have the e-version, and everything is clickable. You can have a podcast started within 4 hours. So, and I just want to say, guys, the T-shirt that I wear every day says, "Today I decide." I decide to be the victim, or I decide to be the victor. And if you guys listen to this show, you are no longer victims of your past, but you're victors of your present and your future. So I want to thank you guys for showing up and hanging out with Adam and me today. And I love you guys. Adam, my brother, have a great week.
Take care, brother. Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate it, man.
All right, brother, be good. And guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way is to go up. I love you guys. Have a great week.